For the Steelers offense to get back to where it needs to be this season, the offensive line plays a big part. They don't need to be elite, but they have to be good enough. Can they be? A former NFL player criticized the Steelers for their offensive line moves recently. We'll talk about those comments. Joining me today is Tony Serino of the AFC North Talk podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter, here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Steelers, your daily Pittsburgh Steelers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome to the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter, bringing you your daily dose of all things in the Pittsburgh Steelers. As always, you can find the show on Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Odyssey, and YouTube. If you're watching this video on YouTube, hit the like button on this video if you enjoyed. Hit the subscribe button on our YouTube channel to get all of our daily Monday through Friday episodes, as well as our breaking news updates and bonus content. We thank you for making the Locked On Steelers podcast your first listen every day. Joining me today is our man, Tony Serino. He's back in the house. It's time for a Tony Thursday.
We made it work. We made it work. Yes, I am back. Vacation is done. There's no more vacation for us, Chris. We're a week away from the start of training camp. Less than
we are, baby. Even. And am I? Is it safe for me to announce that you're going to be making a trip soon?
I will be. The plane ticket is booked. The car is rented. The Airbnb is rented. I will be there for 3 weeks of training camp. Yeah, I'm gonna miss the last week, but I will be there. Yeah, I'll be there for every day. So if you're at Steelers training camp, hit me up. I'll be there. Excited to meet some fans, and certainly I'm as excited as I've ever been for a Steelers training camp. This is my third one, but Chris, this one, I mean, there's so much intrigue. I'm excited to talk to you today about the offensive line because there's a ton of intrigue there as well.
The boys are back in town. It's been too long. 2019 was the last time. If you've been a long-time listener of this podcast, we used to record out of Tony's car after training camp practices. We used to be breaking things down. He would be screaming, Devlin Hodges is going to be the superstar on the team. And gosh, was he right.
And that was dead accurate.
That was that is the craziest call in the history of this show. That was correct. But
who will be this year's Devlin Hodges?
Are you a big Chris Oladikin guy?
May not be a quarterback. May have to switch it up. May have to switch it up this year. Maybe it's an offensive lineman.
Maybe it's an offensive lineman. But let's talk about the offensive line. Now, the comment I was talking about earlier was made by Ross Tucker. If you don't know who Ross Tucker is, he's a former NFL player, media member. He does a lot of different things. But he said, quote unquote, the Steelers' offensive line was predictably really bad last year. So they fixed the problem by bringing in Mason Cole and James Daniels. Wait, what? If those guys are the answer, you are likely asking the wrong question, end quote. Tony, obviously that's a dig at the Steelers saying that they didn't do enough. And you and I have talked about this. I don't think the Steelers did do enough to say, hey, the offensive line is definitely fixed. But I do think that James Daniels carries merit to his name and what he brought. I don't think it's like bringing those guys in was a terrible move. I do think they upgraded at center because Kendrick was just really bad. And I do think they upgraded at right guard because Trey Turner was okay, but not great. And James Daniels is a guy who Bears fans were like, oh man, how did we lose that guy?
Right, exactly. This was a very strange comment from Ross because generally I agree with a lot of Ross's takes. And he's a smart guy, and he's certainly, as a former offensive lineman, you respect his takes, but I thought this one was just really strange, especially, considering, a lot of this is about context, right? If he's saying, boy, the Steelers didn't do enough to be a top 10 offensive line. Well, I think everyone, you and I would certainly agree with that. I think a lot of the listeners would agree with that. Certainly, they're not going to be a top 10 offensive line. But right now, with the stage that they're in, we've talked about this before, they're in a stage where they need to find some young core pieces to build around this offensive line, right? Much like you could say the Bengals have been in for the past couple years, when they had young guys like Jonah Williams on their offensive line, which they are now built, in the process of building around with key veterans. James Daniels is a young player. Mason Cole's a young player. Chukwuma Okorafor is still young. Dan Moore is a rookie. And when we talk about the left guard spot, whether it's Dotson or Kendrick Green, those are young players, right? We've talked about this before. The Steelers are going to have a very, very young offensive line. And that way, I think, maybe Ross Tucker doesn't understand the questions that the Steelers are asking. They're not asking to build an elite offensive line just yet. They're asking to find the guys who will be a part of the next elite Steelers offensive line. And then that's what this year and this training camp is going to be about.
Yeah, exactly. This training camp, again, we're doing training camp previews. We're going piece by piece. We did quarterbacks to start the week. We did defensive line yesterday, so we're switching back to the offense to talk about the offensive line today. But that's the big thing about this group is that we just need to see what identity they're going to have. Last year, Adrian Clem, the new offensive line coach back then, in his first year of doing it, he did a lot of talk about saying like, "Hey, this group's going to be physical, and then they're going to be tough, and they're going to be nasty." And there were times they were nasty; they just weren't nasty in the right directions. And Kendrick Green was just, he's flying down the field.
Gross. It wasn't nasty. It was actually gross to watch.
There you go. It's gross. It was disgusting, not nasty. But this year there's been a talk, and I asked, like, hey, what's the difference with Pat Meyer, who's a very experienced offensive line coach in the NFL, versus Adrian Clem, that was his first time? And they said, like, hey, there's still that nasty talk that we want to be this dominant physical group, but there's also more poignant notes as far as how we get there, and there's more notations as far as how we do it. And that's from guys who were here last year, and Kevin Dotson and Kendrick Green and Chukwuma Okorafor and Dan Moore Jr. And there's new guys like James Daniels who said, listen, when I was in Chicago, I played 3 different positions, and they basically told me the same thing every time, and I kind of just figured it out myself. But this guy, Pat Meyer, is telling everyone specifically something different. Hey, this is what you need to do. This is what you need to do. To me, a big part of what this year is about, like you said, it's not going to be about them becoming elite. It's about them being competent. It's about them finding, hey, who are the pieces that we want to keep around whenever the Steelers do invest in and go get multiple first-round picks or a bigger name free agent that they add in the future, because they want to get a really good offensive line around Najee Harris. Not that they don't want to, but they also know that there's other priorities out there. They have to fix other pieces. The defensive line is going to need some reconstructing soon. Just because Cam Hayward's up there, Tyson Alualu's up there. That's why they drafted the Marvin Leal, and they're hoping for guys like Isaiah Loudermilk to step up. But when I look at this offensive line, the idea I think right now is James Daniels, Chukwuma Okorafor. You are 2 guys with a ton of experience at 24 years old. If one of you guys can become a piece that's a part of the next really good to great Steelers offensive line, awesome. And if you can pull one of these lower drafted round guys like Kevin Dotson, maybe a Kendrick Green if he wins the left guard spot, like Dan Moore Jr., if you could pull one of those guys along with you, and maybe Mason Cole kind of just holds the place at center for a little bit until they figure out who their next center is, that's a win. And then you're in a position in the next year, the year after that, where maybe the Steelers are back to kind of having one of the better offensive lines, and it'll be a young group with experienced leaders. That, to me, is the goal, especially in training camp.
No doubt. I mean, exactly. I mean, they by the end of this season, the Steelers should feel like they're a year away, right? Okay, we know what we have, and we just have to plug the rest in. Again, I keep bringing this up with the Bengals, but I think the Steelers really are kind of the Bengals, but 2 years ago, right, or even a year ago. And like you said, can they get some? Maybe they have, and I think this is the hope is you do have 2 guys on the right side with Chooks and with James Daniels that do have a lot of experience but are still young. If they could really solidify there, the question marks really, Chris, are really from the middle to the left, right? Center, who is Mason Cole exactly? Is he going to be? Certainly, you would expect him to be better than Kendrick Green was a year ago, but I don't know that he's certainly going to be any kind of superstar or anything. There's big questions about left guard because Kevin Dotson Kevin Dotson is still, this player who 2 years ago, everyone thought he could be special. And then, last year, injury concerns and whatnot. And, the question marks around Kendrick Green are really, okay, he was not good at center. You move him to guard, right? It's the old adage, like, you have a bad center, you move him to guard, now you have a bad guard. Well, okay, that's not going to be good for the Steelers. And then left tackle, which is maybe the most intriguing spot on the roster, because that's a spot where I think a lot of people aren't talking enough. Dan Moore, he showed some signs last year. He wasn't great last year, but I think he showed enough that the Steelers did not address that position whatsoever, because they feel good enough about Dan Moore at that left tackle spot that this is not, they're not putting him in a 2-dog, 1-bone situation like they did with Kendrick Green. It's a 4th-round pick who basically is the entrenched starter at left tackle.
I agree, and then that's the interesting part here. There's some people who say Dan Moore is more of a guard than a tackle, or saying this, that, and the third. the Steelers have made it clear, like with Kendrick Green and with Trey Turner, they weren't just going to wait around if they didn't see potential in you. They were going to go get your replacement and find a way to do that. They didn't do that for Dan Moore. I think that speaks to something. I want to talk about what it speaks to, though, in a second here in the next segment. But first, we got to talk to you guys about Built Bar. Built Bar is, of course, the ultimate protein bar that tastes like a candy bar. And they have this great new flavor called Coconut Brownie Chunk Puff. If you haven't tried it out yet, it's an amazing flavor that comes in both the Built Bar form and the Built Puff form. If you don't remember, Built Bars are the amazing regular protein bars covered in 100% real chocolate. But the Built Puffs are like chewy, marshmallowy centers with the same 100% chocolate covering. But both of these are available with the coconut brownie chunk flavor that comes right from Built Bar, and it's going fast, because when you're thinking about a coconut brownie chunk, when you're talking about how it's being fluffy, how there's the chocolate, there's the coconut flavor to it, all those things come into factor. And just like every other Built Bar and Built Puff, they're good for you because they're low in calories, low in sugar, high in protein, and all delicious. And each Built Bar is made with collagen protein, which makes which is something a protein that helps your body absorb more efficiently and provides a lot more health benefits. Eat something that tastes good and is good for you. But get the coconut brownie chunk puff flavor by going to built.com. Use the promo code LOCKED15. That's LOCKED15, LOCKED15, and you'll get 15% off your next order when you visit built.com. Back here on the Locked On Steelers podcast, I'm Chris Carter. He's Tony Serino. We're previewing the Steelers offensive line. Tony, before we get back to the Steelers offensive line, I want to go over with you your thoughts on the latest Madden ratings. Now, everyone was so mad. Oh yeah, the hard hitting news that is because T.J. Watt was not the number one edge rusher. He was ranked 90. He was a 96, and Myles Garrett was a 99. Steelers Nation threw a fit about that. But then they had the travesty to make Minka Fitzpatrick not a top 10 safety.
What? For real? I didn't even see this.
Oh yeah. Not only was Minkah Fitzpatrick not a top 10 safety, Najee Harris was also not a top 10 running back.
Okay. Those are silly, but you know what's even sillier than all that, Chris? Anyone caring about Madden ratings.
Talking about it in the first
caring about this stuff. Oh my goodness. I cannot believe that this is an actual thing that people, I mean, look, Chris, I know we're doing a little meme segment here, but no, other podcasts are like doing legitimate, like full segments on how this is a travesty and whatnot. Who cares? Madden's a bad video game. Okay. Why do you care what the ratings are on a bad video game? I don't.
Yeah, I as a person who used to play Madden religiously, and you could ask, I've said on this show, you could ask people that know me, the people that play me. I was serious about Madden. I took people out. I went to tournaments. There was one time I had to throw a tournament because I hosted it and I was in the championship. So I had to kind of just throw the championship round. Otherwise, it would have looked real sketchy giving myself the money. But anyways, long story short, I used to play Madden. It's a terrible game now. They need to upgrade it and they need to stop coming up with these goofy ratings. But like you said, who cares?
Who cares?
We're just here to laugh about this in the first place. Now, back to our main discussion, and that's the offensive line. What I wanted to get to was one thing that I think that does help Dan Moore Jr.'s case and could help Kevin Dotson and the rest of the crew is chemistry. Now, of course, there's not going to be chemistry for Mason Cole and James Daniels. They just got here. But the guys that the guy that's good that would be closest to them is Chukwuma Okorafor, and he's a veteran. I think that he's fine on his own.
He is the veteran of the group.
Yeah, he is the veteran. Yeah, but I think he's the guy that Chukwuma Okorafor. He's going to be a superstar right tackle, but he's going to be a good one, and he's going to give you really good reps, and you can count on him to do his job. Now, this year, you're going to have Kevin Dotson, who has told me straight up when I've asked him in the locker room that last year he didn't feel comfortable switching from right guard to left guard. It forced a lot of mental errors on his part, but that this year he feels a lot better with it. And the other factor is his connection with Dan Moore Jr. The guys go fishing together. They do a lot of stuff together. They talk, and Dan Moore says the same thing. He's like, listen, there's a lot of times when we see something in practice, we look at each other, we know exactly what that is. Or sometimes they just said they don't even look at each other and they know how to react to what the coaches are trying to get them to see. That, I think, is going to play a huge factor in this, is how this line comes together as a group. They don't have to be elite. If you remember, Tony, that Jaguars offensive line that beat up on the Steelers in the 2017 playoffs, or 2017 season, 2018 playoffs, but that they weren't, full of, future Hall of Famers, but they were a well-oiled young group that was able to come together and show chemistry in the right moments to let their star running back do the rest of the work. That's all this group needs to do.
That's exactly right. Yeah, it goes back. It's the old Mitchell Schwartz saying, right? Which is you'd rather have 5 average offensive linemen than 3 elite ones and 2 terrible ones, right? Because
Right.
yeah, to that point again, right? That's what the Steelers are aiming for this season. The chemistry point is a good one because and going back to Ross Tucker's thing, like all they added was James Daniels and Mason Cole. Well, again, what if Dan Moore was a hit on the left side? Right? I mean, again, what if they found their left tackle of the future here? Again, they didn't need to go out and add a stud left tackle if they already have one who's serviceable enough on the roster. Same thing can be said, like you said, about Chooks. Chooks, we know, is a good pass protector. There's a lot of questions about him in run defense, but I think he's been as Tomlin would say, above the line when it comes to pass protection at times throughout his career. Although pass protection is going to be an interesting one this year, Chris, because they're going to have Kenny Pickett and Mitch Trubisky back there, not Ben Roethlisberger. And Ben Roethlisberger got rid of the ball real quick. I don't know if that's going to be the case with the other two.
And see, this is another aspect of this training camp preview that I wanted to discuss was that in pass protection, there's a lot of talk about run offense and blocking and being physical, but pass protection is a huge part of this. Whereas it will be a boost to have a quarterback who can create, can run out of the pocket, can not be just a sitting duck liability the way Ben Roethlisberger was. But there's also going to be a drawback because you won't get Ben Roethlisberger's sense of I'm getting rid of the football really quickly because I want to protect myself and this doesn't expose the offensive line that bad. I think that's going to be a major lesson that the Steelers have to learn or see, from this group when you see how they come out this year, because there hasn't been someone that's figured that out really. I think that for the Steelers offensive line, no one's gotten used to playing with Mason Rudolph or some guy who could move. And I think it's why it's good that they got a Pat Meyer, an offensive line coach who wasn't set in their ways. I think it's why it's good they have a new offensive coordinator in Matt Canada. I mean, second year, but still. But they're going to have fresh ideas on offense to work this. They're not going to be stuck in the mud with the ways that used to work with Ben Roethlisberger. Right.
And it's going to kind of be like a mask off type situation for this offensive line when it comes to pass protection, because, if you're on a field that just go by PFF grades, right? If all you live by is PFF grades for pass protection, you would have said for the last 2 years, like the Steelers are a decent pass protecting team. I think PFF had the Steelers in a pass protection offensive line as one of the better offensive lines in the league, top half of the league. But we all know, again, we as fans who watch this on a down to down basis, we know, okay, this was not a top half of the group. They had a quarterback that just got rid of the ball really quickly. So it was really hard to get pressure. It brings me back to a thing with Alejandro Villanueva a year ago was a free agent about this time. PFF thought it was an unbelievable signing by Baltimore to bring him in. Oh, what a great signing it was.
Yeah, we said what that was about.
Yeah, and every Steelers fan's like, okay, yeah, good luck out there. And we all know what happened, right? Villanueva was a disaster for them as a turnstile left tackle. And I think that, look, if there's going to be a disappointment for me this year, Dan Moore at times last year really struggled against speed rushers. And if Kenny Pickett and Mitch Trubisky are going to hold on to the ball too long, they may take some shots from their blind side from Dan Moore. But he's got to show improvement there. And really, this entire offensive line, I think, it is a mask-off situation. I don't know that we can grade anyone truly on what they are as a pass protector, and we'll find that out this year. Like you said, with how Canada wants to deploy this thing, how much of a moving pocket are we going to see, and how much of it is still going to be built on getting rid of the ball quickly because we're a little unsure what we have thus far on this offensive line.
There's a big part of this that could be negated by, hey, you know what? What if we roll to the right a lot more often? What if we run more pistol that gets it? One thing we've seen is a lot of shotgun, a lot of guys in practice working the jet sweeps to try to freeze. I think part of what the Steelers are going to try to do is, and I talked about this, the whole point of the jet sweeps, the fake motions and the things like that with play action, they want to freeze some of these aggressive defenders that are in the box, not just the edge rushers, but the linebackers who can come in too. And some of the times when the slot corners blitz or the safeties come in, they want to slow those guys up because the more that they slow those guys up, the more time they have to exactly what their play is. And I think that's going to be a way that they can help protect their offensive line. But I do think it's going to be a major challenge. Hey, Dan Moore, there were times you got abused last season. I know PFF grades are crazy, but they gave him a legit 0 grade against Myles Garrett. That I had never seen that before. And I was like, whoa, they really wanted to lay it thick on him. But I still say, Dan Moore Jr. acquitted himself well as a 4th-round rookie offensive tackle, over the whole season. So if he's made strides, that's going to be great. But we have to see this in action. We got to see when the pads go on at training camp, because Pat Meyer, he can say all the right things and get these guys in the right mindset. But if when a blitzer's coming up B gap and you're too busy looking at the wrong shoulder because you're concerned about the wrong assignment, it won't matter how much you trained or how good you felt about the practice notes that he gave you if you're not executing in the moment.
Yeah, and to put a bow on this all together, right? Coming out of last season, I was much more worried about where the Steelers were from an interior of their offensive line than it was from the two tackles, right? I mean, Chooks wasn't great, but he's serviceable, and Dan Moore, I thought, as the year went on, did get better and better, and you felt like he was deserving of a starting spot. To Ross Tucker's point about you're asking the wrong questions, the Steelers addressed the interior of the offensive line. That is where the real problems were last season. So, to Ross Tucker, I say, you're wrong. You're wrong, buddy.
You're wrong. That's what this shows. It says, Ross Tucker, you're wrong.
You're wrong.
And that's fine. I like you said, I respect a lot of Ross Tucker's opinions. I just think that this is what happens when people take a sky's eye view of things with the Steelers. Yeah, sure. They didn't add, they didn't go draft one of the top tier offensive linemen. They didn't go sign like 3 superstar offensive linemen.
They didn't get Lyle Collins. They did not do that, but
they didn't go do those things. But they're doing the things to lay the bones down and see who's going to be the foundation for the next offensive line, because they know it takes time. I think it was Mike Tomlin when he was with Stephen A. Smith, when Stephen A. Smith was coming at him about his secondary and his cornerbacks, and he says, Stephen A., you used to say that I couldn't draft offensive linemen, and now we have one of the best offensive lines in the league. So just remember that when you're coming at me, man. And Stephen A. is like, oh, you got me, coach. But I think that's part of the process here. And it's not just Mike Tomlin, it's the front office with Omar Khan now. I think they understand, look, you don't try to get it all in one bite. If it's there for you, awesome. But you don't oversell everything and sacrifice your continuity across the board on your roster. You make natural picks, natural selections, see who guys can be added to the roster, over time, and find the guys that'll be your long-term pieces. I think they're going to find their goal right now is to find 2 or 3 of those guys this year, and they'll make the next additions either in the NFL draft next year or the year after that, or find their next guy in free agency. But we got to take another break. When we come back, it's time for a segment that we do every year, me and Tony, for the past 3 years. I want to say 4 years maybe, but I think it's 4 years. I think it's
every year I've done this. Yeah, so it's 4 years.
Every year, Steelers jersey power rankings. Who should you be buying? We have our rules for how you pick them. We'll talk about that in just a second, but we got a break. We'll be right back. Back here on the Locked On Steelers podcast, I'm your host, Chris Carter, here with Tony Serino. Tony, it's time for the Steelers jersey power rankings. Now, let me be clear.
Mm-hmm.
The point of this is to have fun. This is not like we're breaking some hardcore news or analysis right here. This is
maybe you're not, but okay. All right.
We're already off to a hot start. But point being, we have our own methodologies for how Steelers fans should choose their jersey if they want to buy one this year. Now, you may be one of the people that buys 5 every year. You got issues. But we have different rules, and we have released our top 5 jerseys to buy each season. Now, Tony, before you reveal your list, I want you to explain your rules and your mind, your thinking behind how you pick every year.
Well, this really started because back in 2015, 2016, one of those years, whatever year this player was a rookie, I bought his jersey after week 1 that year. Artie Burns is the player. Okay. And I vowed to myself, we can't let this happen again. I know, Chris, it's bad. I own an Artie Burns jersey. We're never gonna let that happen again. Okay. And so from that point, what I put together was basically the understanding, look, when you buy a player, it's got to be a couple things. One, you probably shouldn't buy a rookie. And if you buy a rookie, you better be damn sure that player is going to be around for a while. Otherwise, you need to buy players that are on their second contract. Hey, you want to have a longevity. This is the Artie Burns rule, Chris. I'm never getting burned by Artie again. And so all of the players on my list, these are players that you can wear their jersey 10 years from now and it'd still be valid, right? And these are like, wearing Troy Polamalu these days. You could wear Troy Polamalu whenever you want. And I think all the players on my list say for one, maybe, certainly fit that category. There's one on my list that is it's on sale right now. You got to get it. It's red hot. You gotta get it now. And we'll talk about that when we get there.
Before we get to those, I'll explain my methodology. We
Mhm.
think differently because Tony thinks, longevity. I think get the I'm the cool Steelers fan jersey. So you don't get the jerseys that are everyone's always had. Like you don't get a Cam Hayward, you don't get a T.J. Watt. Now the thing is, it used to be don't get a Ben Roethlisberger because he was a jersey that he'd been there long enough. You want to get the young guy who's cool, who's hot, and if you got him, you're like people are like, ooh yeah, that's a really good jersey pick. You're a real Steelers fan, and
you're like you're like a hipster Steelers fan though. It's like
exactly
you know what I mean?
hipster. Yes, hipster is very much the vibe.
Okay.
And
All right.
I also have a rule about retired players. You have to be eligible for the Hall of Fame. You don't have to be in the Hall of Fame. You just have to be 5 years removed from your NFL career. So like Ben Roethlisberger, my rule, no, don't wear it, Steelers fans. But like Hines Ward, Troy Polamalu, those guys, all now eligible for that opportunity. Now,
Antonio Holmes
eligible for that opportunity. He retired. That long ago. So all that being said,
how long has it been since Duck retired?
It's been a year. You gotta wait.
That's a long year, Chris. It's been a long year.
It's been a long year. But okay, without further ado, let's get to our top 5 jersey rankings. Your number 5 jersey to buy if you're a Steelers fan.
My number 5 is a player near and dear to all of our hearts. He just retired this year. That doesn't mean you can't buy his jersey. Ben Roethlisberger. Get it now.
Why?
Listen, he's never leaving the list. Why? First of all, you should get it customized. Get it with "Thank you, Ben" on the back. All right, fans, and that way it's like date stamps that people know. Oh, you got it like right after he retired. That's okay. I like that. You want to go and say call this the hipster Ben jersey, Chris. All right, you get it. You get a Ben jersey, but it's unique enough that everyone thinks, oh, okay, that's neat. That's a cool jersey.
So now here's the thing: if you were at the last game at Cleveland, I get it because they were screaming "Thank you, Ben," like stuff like that.
We
that
were also
would be different.
I was at the Chiefs game. We were also screaming it at the Chiefs game. There weren't as many of us, I'll say, but
and it wasn't as happy of an ending.
Well, no, but they did have the lead in the second quarter, so they got that going for them.
If we turn the tape off at that point, it's great. All right, so your number 5.
They didn't lose. They just ran out of time. Or
your number
time
5
too long.
Jeez, your number 5 is Ben Roethlisberger. So
Easily.
you break one of my immediate rules.
I disagree with your rules fundamentally. Yeah, I mean, I fundamentally disagree with your rules.
My number 5 guy is a player. Again, I also have a no rookie rule. So no George Pickens, no Kenny Pickett. Wait for them next year. And I applied this rule last year as well. But number 5 is a player who was a rookie last year, Isaiah Loudermilk. Now this is a sneaky jersey by Steelers fans. Hear me out. You're probably thinking like, why would I wear that guy? I'm telling you, that kid is going to be like the next Brett Kiesel for this organization.
Wow.
Like the low drafted guy who just kind of hangs around. They don't pay him a lot of money, but then he comes up and he starts to become this really good defensive lineman. He's jacked. He's huge. He's got a chance to really stick in. I think that if you buy his jersey now at 92 and you say, man, I've had this jersey since 2021 or 2022. Now people are going to be like, oh, wow, so you knew. Exactly. I knew. So part of this is hopping on the Isaiah Loudermilk bandwagon.
Yeah, just started it. I have now started. Congratulations. I've been waiting for this moment for years, Chris. For 3 years. I've been waiting for you to jump on some player on the team who's just not, I want to call him a nobody, because Loudermilk was a fine player a year ago. But I've been waiting for you to jump on kind of a third-tier player and really latch on and start that hype train. And I am very, very excited. I may buy an Isaiah Loudermilk jersey to support you in this endeavor, Chris. Let's go. Let the Isaiah Loudermilk train start here. All aboard.
You're ridiculous. All right, your number 4 Steelers jersey to buy this year.
All right, number 4. He's getting to the end of the road here. That doesn't mean you shouldn't buy it because Cam Hayward's going to be a legend here. He is a legend right now for the Steelers on this defense. True, he is the leader of this defense right now. Yeah, he's still playing good football. I mean, I know that every year we talk about boys getting up there in age. Boy, when's it going to end for him? But we really shouldn't be, because if you look at the numbers, it doesn't look like a player who's going to be retiring anytime soon. So I think Cam Hayward's still very valid. And by the way, I don't see a ton of Cam Hayward jerseys out there. I mean, this is still one. If we're doing the hipster Steeler thing, really. No, I think. We'll see what I see at training camp this year, because they're going to have been to Pittsburgh in 3 years. So that could
that could change things.
Here in Orlando, I definitely don't see a lot of Cam Hayward jerseys. But we'll see what I see at training camp. But yeah, I think Hayward is still a very valid jersey to buy, now, 3 years from now. I mean, again, you can wear this far after he retires.
He's an all-time Steeler. Regardless of
Hall of
whether he's
Famer?
in the Hall of Fame, I think he should be if he keeps on if he does 2 more years of what he's doing now, I think he should be a Hall of Famer. But even if he's not, he's Hall of Honor. And if you're Hall of Honor, you're definitely jersey worthy. But again, my rule, him and T.J. Watt are the 2 guys on this roster that I'm like, you guys are too established. You're too fan. Like you wear a T.J. Watt jersey. It's like, okay, you're a Steelers fan. You might be a Steelers. You might just be a bandwagon boy. That's where I think like you don't get cool points for those jerseys, even though they are great jerseys to have and they are legendary players. But if you bought Cam Hayward back in like 2015 and 2016, you were cool. If you bought TJ Watt back in like up to like 2019, you were cool. But TJ Watt the last 2 years, it's too meta, too easy.
All right.
We'll get.
Can't wait to see Chris Boswell on your list. I can't wait. When does Chris Boswell come up? You got a kicker jersey. You don't see a lot of Chris Boswell jerseys out there.
My number 4 pick,
Chris Boswell.
Alex Highsmith.
No, okay, that's dangerous.
I do agree. This is dangerous, but this is why I think. Because here's the other thing: is that like, say he does only last 4 years with the Steelers, because that's part of why Tony says he's dangerous, because they've already paid TJ Watt all this money. They might not pay another edge rusher that serious kind of money to stick around, especially if he evolves into a Bud Dupree type of player who can get $72 million on the open market. But I say this to you, Tony: if say Alex Highsmith has some really great times with the Pittsburgh Steelers and goes on, then you'll be like, oh man, that's an Alex Highsmith jersey, man. If only we could have kept him. But he was an awesome player. I did enjoy his time. That's a heck of a throwback there. That's where I'm thinking on the logic side here, man. Okay. I'm thinking on the longevity. I think right now, Alex Highsmith, you wear Alex Highsmith jersey, there'd be a small percentage of fans in Heinz Field who wear that, because he's not an established superstar. He's a guy that if you're a fan, but you're in a position where you're not. It's obvious the team if you buy Alex Highsmith jersey, and he's good. And I'm telling you, this year you're gonna have a lot of reasons to celebrate.
I want to know from you got a huge following in the Facebook groups. I want to hear from them. How many of you own Keenan Lewis jerseys or Emmanuel Sanders jerseys? Right? Do you feel this way? I mean, is it when they leave the team, you're like, it's still cool to wear the jersey? Because I don't know, Chris. When AB left the team, I didn't wear my AB jersey anymore.
But see, if Alex Highsmith burns a bridge, that's different,
right?
But when you talk about that, even Emmanuel Sanders kind of burned a bridge when he talked about, he kind of subliminally
he did throw Ben under the bus a little bit.
He threw Ben under the bus with his praising of Peyton Manning when he left. But AB burned a bridge. Keenan Lewis, I think, is different because he didn't really work out for where he went. But I think like a San Antonio Holmes jersey is cool. That's like, he went to the Jets and almost beat them in that playoff game, but he still won you Super Bowl 43. I also think a Lamar Woodley jersey is cool. He was a big part. He was a big part of that.
They had their best times there. I mean, the worry I think with Highsmith, right, is that they have so much money invested defensively right now. We've all seen the thing, like they're the highest paid defense and the lowest paid offense.
Yep.
I just worry, it's almost like there's a ceiling on the number of sacks Highsmith can have per year from this point forward. Because like if he ever gets to double digits, like, all right, well, he's Bud Dupree. See ya. So you're almost capping it. He's a player, Chris. We have this category. Keep the tag on it. Keep the tag on the jersey. You may need to exchange this one a couple years from now.
Who's your number 3?
Number 3 for me. This is a player who, when he got on the team, I thought there's no way he's going to be good because they gave him the worst number you could possibly give a safety. And he has done an unbelievable job of overcoming it. Minka Fitzpatrick here just signed the deal, so he's going to be around. Regardless of what Madden says, one of the best safeties in the NFL. I don't want to say he single-handedly transformed this defense because, boy, they have so much talent on it. But, you can certainly draw a straight line between when they became elite, and then that line is the acquisition of Minka Fitzpatrick and an elite player in that secondary. So, a jersey you can wear. Again, this is another one you can wear 10 years from now, and I think everyone understands Minka Fitzpatrick, great Steeler.
I just want to point out, I told Tony years ago when they signed Minka Fitzpatrick, and he took that number, that's actually a great number because no one's gonna mistake it for him, and he should keep it. And lo and behold,
well, I don't know. You know what? Is Minka Fitzpatrick the best 39 that has ever played for the Steelers?
At the safety position, who's gonna mistake him for that?
Okay, but Willie Parker, 80-yard touchdown in the Super Bowl.
No. I'm not saying for the Steelers. I'm talking about safety wise. Like that's a really identifiable number. Like if you say safety 39, Darren Perry. It might
Darren
be
Perry. Yeah. That's the
like
one. Right.
But that's another one. That'd be a cool Steelers jersey. Like, ooh, a Darren Perry fan. I haven't seen one of those too often.
Maybe I should add some retros to this. Who wants to get a Neil O'Donnell jersey right
now?
Okay, Bubby Brister?
I just throw everything I have over
Art
here
Malone?
At you. You're okay. Stop it before you cause more pain. My number 3 is Pat Freiermuth. Obvious reason. He's young, second-year player, had a great first season. I think he's going to continue ascending. And I really think Pat Freiermuth is one of those guys, like a couple of other guys on this list that I have above him. You're only going to be able to buy his jersey for the next year or two more before it's not cool anymore. Before it's like, okay, everybody has a Pat Freiermuth because he's that good. But that's why he's my number 3 because I think he's fine. Who's your number 2?
Yeah. 2 for me is T.J. Watt. This is the best player on the team right now. Defensive player of the year. It's, for your hipster rankings, he's like, I'm going to guess if we did the inverse, he would be at the bottom of your list, right? Because
you couldn't buy him because you can't because it's just, you're super meta and everyone's going to be like, you're just doing what everyone else is doing. You're fitting in with you're just trying to fit
follow the crowd. Follow the crowd. That's me.
Follow the crowd.
Follow the crowd guy.
You want to follow the crowd. My number 2 is Minka Fitzpatrick. Here's the only reason he wouldn't have been on this list if he didn't have the year he had kind of last year where he wasn't an all-pro. Part of it, I still say, was more so the run defense and him having to help out in different situations. Yeah. But I think this year that run defense will be fixed. I think he'll be back to his X-Factor role, and I think he'll get another first-team all-pro. And I think that Minka Fitzpatrick, after that, will then be in my category of, he's been overdone. Everyone's going to have him, I think. So this is my last year where it's cool to have to buy a Minka Fitzpatrick jersey. And by the way, I want to say if you bought them before that point, that is totally fine. You could totally wear them afterwards. It's about buying the jersey at the moment. But I'm pretty sure who both of our number 1s are.
Yes, you are correct. Now, for me, this was hard to do because the last time we did this, I believe you put James Conner very high on the list.
I did.
And I said, look, you got to keep the tag on that one because this guy might not be on the team a couple years from now. I feel the same way. I feel the same way about Najee Harris, man. Look, and he's only in the second year. He's got a 5th-year option. They will likely pick up that 5th-year option. So you at least have 4 more years. But, man, if you want a Najee Harris jersey, buy it now if you want to get any longevity out of it. Because I don't know about running backs and second contracts. Certainly the Steelers were willing to pay Le'Veon Bell, but Omar Khan's a new GM. How does he feel about paying running backs? I don't know that you're going to get a second contract out of this one. So if you want the Najee Harris jersey, when you're done with today's podcast, go to NFL Shop and buy it right now. You got to get your longevity out of it.
Now, I agree that there's the longevity question, but the reason I said about James Conner also was because he was a Pittsburgh hero. He was from Pennsylvania. True. He beat cancer. He was a star for Pitt, and then he came to the Steelers and played very well. That is, to me, a big you could wear James Conner right now, even while he's playing for the Arizona Cardinals, and it's like respect like that. That's why I said that then. Najee Harris, I want to say part of it is written in stone that he is going to be longer than the next 4 years because simply of the writing on the wall, or should I say on the roster. Do you know what Najee's middle name is?
I do not.
His full name is Najee Jerome Harris.
Okay.
My man is part Jerome Bettis, part Franco Harris, and at the same time Najee. Mm-hmm. So by this logic, he's gonna be there for like 10 years.
He'll be there forever. Yeah. And then he'll end his career with the Seahawks.
Or he'll end his career winning a Super Bowl in his hometown, which I guess is kind of San Francisco, which actually could have kind of happened someday.
That actually could happen. The Steelers and then Anthony McFarland runs an 80-yard touchdown in the Super Bowl. It's unbelievable. It's stupid. Love it. Love it. Najee Harris second contract, man. You are certainly more confident than I am in that. Although for me right now, it doesn't matter. I mean, get his jersey today because you got 4 good years.
Yeah, and that's my thing with it. And here's the other thing: if you get in a jersey, you ain't getting it. You want a jersey to last for you a long time, like that. That makes a ton of sense. But realistically, if you're like a diehard Steelers fan and you get jerseys like once a year and everything. If you get one that lasts you 4 years, You got a good jersey.
Oh, if you're the guy who gets one every year, get George Pickens this year. Get George Pickens this year. He's got that dog in him, Chris.
I do think he has that dog in him. I just, against my rule of rookies, I think it's a bad luck thing. As you displayed with Artie Burns, because there were a lot of people that declared him a really good draft pick. I also had a friend who bought Jarvis Jones, and I'm still sure that friend is the reason why Jarvis Jones became who he was. But anyways, those were our jersey power rankings of who you should buy. We're way over our time. Tony, thanks so much for joining us here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Let people can find you, follow you, and get more of your work.
Yeah, you can follow me on Twitter at Steeler Country. You can also find me next week, Wednesday. I will be at Steelers training camp. I will have, you know what, Chris, for you, I will have my 92 jersey on that opening day. I'm going to get my Isaiah Loudermilk jersey fast track to me, ready to go. Let's join it, everybody. The Isaiah Loudermilk hype train. Chris, you started it, and I will help you lead the charge. You can also find me on AFC North Talk. It's a YouTube show all about the AFC North. We are back the first week of August, doing our rankings defensively, starting with the edge rush position.
I just want to say, what have I done now that I put him on? This is truly just a masterpiece on my part. I need Tony to have more bandwagons because it's fun for the show. So now I've sort of just created the Isaiah Loudermilk bandwagon and just left it there. And now he sort of hopped on it and just said, "This is mine." Anyways,
yeah, I don't want to co-op. I don't want to steal it from you. I don't want to
co-opt it. Co-op, take it.
No. This is your thing, but I'm certainly going to help you lead the charge.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Tony, for coming on the show. I'm Chris Carter, host of the Locked On Steelers podcast. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Carter Critiques. Read my work at SteelersNow.com. Check out this podcast, the Locked On Steelers podcast, everywhere, especially on Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Odyssey, and YouTube. Like the video if you enjoyed it on YouTube. Subscribe to our YouTube channel to get all of our daily Monday through Friday episodes. We'll be back tomorrow. We're hoping to have Jenna Harner on the show. We got to make sure her schedule works with mine. But if we do, it's going to be a fun one. We hope to see you then right here on the Locked On Steelers podcast.